Murder caught on webcam. This case unfolds in Italy and the UK. Jason Peter Marshall was born on August 11, 1988, in Greenwich, South London. His young family was beset by substance addiction, marking a troubled beginning to his life, which only worsened over time. By the age of 10, with both parents incarcerated, Jason's suffering deepened. He was placed in a children's home in Southend and moved between various foster homes. Upon his mother's release from prison, social services deemed it appropriate to reunite them. However, she proved to be an inadequate caregiver. By the age of 12, Jason began experiencing auditory hallucinations and visual delusions, involving angels and aliens at times. He even believed himself to be the incarnation of the Archangel Gabriel. As a teenager, Jason was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, a condition marked by an obsessive focus on details. His lack of social skills impeded his ability to forge friendships, causing him to withdraw into his own world. While a structured routine typically aids in managing ASD, Jason's chaotic life exacerbated his anxiety and depression. Externally, Jason appeared fresh-faced, slim, calm, and quiet, with chestnut eyes, brown cropped hair, and flawless skin. Internally, however, he was in profound turmoil, feeling powerless and aimless. He loathed himself, seeing himself as a nobody. Yet, he intriguingly recognized the authority and respect commanded by a uniform, leading him to impersonate members of uniformed organizations on several occasions. Jason claimed to have posed as an auditor to embezzle charity funds, dressed as a ticket inspector to issue bogus fines on the London Underground, and even infiltrated police stations in Southwark and Kentish Town to steal radios, apprehending criminals with a homemade warrant card. The veracity of these claims, whether delusions or reality, remains unclear. In 2008, at the age of 20, Jason attempted suicide. Consequently, he was sectioned under the Mental Health Care Act and admitted to the John Howard Centre, a psychiatric unit in East London. He escaped from this low-security facility and committed a series of non-violent crimes, resulting in a brief prison sentence. Afterward, he was monitored by the Dangerous and Severe Personality Disorder Service (DSPD), living a restricted life under close surveillance. 2 years later, he fled the DSPD while being transferred to a specialist hostel. He was soon recaptured and returned to prison, still considered a societal threat. By early 2012, Jason was released under the supervision of his general practitioner. He found temporary accommodation and secured a job as a street cleaner during the London Olympics. This role provided him with a sense of purpose, and he began to lead a normal life. However, this brief period of stability was fleeting. Losing his job plunged him into a downward spiral of depression and heavy drinking, consuming 8 cans of beer and half a bottle of Jack Daniels daily. Not only did he regularly mix his drinks with his medication, but this combination was particularly harmful and reportedly caused him episodes of memory loss. At this low point, Jason was in search of meaning, identity, and a sense of belonging. In his quest, he became a male escort and often found himself struggling financially while dealing with severe personal issues. To cope, Jason Marshall created an alter ego. This allowed him to shield himself from his past trauma. He used various dating apps, such as Grindr, Badoo, and adult work under the pseudonym Gabriel. This is where he met many of his clients, charging £400 an hour for his services. His services were distinctly niche. He focused on S&M bondage and role-play scenarios. When Jason role-played, He was particularly drawn to older, smaller men, preferably Italian. Jason was incredibly creative and enjoyed dressing up as an MI5 agent. To further the dream, he fashioned his own uniform. He played the role of an authority figure, arresting his clients on false accusations. He would strip his clients of their clothes and tie them to a bed during these intense interrogation sessions. His goal was total control over his clients. He would instill panic mixed with fear in his clients till they would beg for forgiveness. This resulted in a powerful yet dangerous experience. The critical event that eventually brought Jason Marshall to public attention occurred one Sunday evening. This was where he met 58-year-old Peter Fasoli through the dating site Badoo. Peter was an Italian-born IT specialist. Peter led a calm, semi-solitary life. He resided in a modest semi-detached cottage with 2 bedrooms in London. His house was only 25 feet wide and 1 story high. Its exterior featured a window spanning the width of the house. He had a mud strip of lawn dotted with potted plants and a bird feeder, as Peter loved birds. The bungalow seemed almost an afterthought at the end of a row of terraced houses, never quite fitting in with its surroundings. This was just like Peter, a homosexual man who was unmarried and very introverted. Despite living in his community for several years, Peter maintained a low profile. Only a few neighbors knew him by name. His living space reflected his profession and personal life. The interior was packed with technology. He had numerous webcams, hard drives, monitors, and computers all crammed into one side of the house. This space served as his workspace and a means to socialize. A simple 2-seater sofa faced the bank of screens. Behind this was a cramped box room just big enough to fit a double mattress. Sadly, this house is where Peter met his end. Peter's family lived in the north of England and had nothing but admiration for him. During an interview, his younger sister stated that he had a great laugh. She said he was always joking around with a dry sense of humor. He had a real cheekiness that always lit up the room. There was not a bad word that could be said about him. Peter was caring and thoughtful. He would give a stranger his last penny. On the flip side, Peter found socializing beyond family challenging. He was small, shy, and somewhat overweight. This made face-to-face interactions quite difficult for him. Although he loved computers, since he had few other hobbies and was not leaving the house much, he had limited opportunities to make new friends. However, the internet's anonymity gave Peter a space to interact more comfortably with others, boosting his confidence beyond what he could muster face-to-face. In this virtual world, he freely expressed his wishes and pursued romantic connections. This scenario is common, leaving many vulnerable in their online exchanges. Peter encountered various people, including Jason Marshall in December 2012. Using the dating app Badoo, Peter found Jason's profile, which expressed a preference for older, shorter, reserved Italian men. They matched and started communicating. Their rapport was initially online, and Peter, deeming Jason trustworthy, invited him over. Their conversations led to an agreement that filled Peter with anticipation and joy. They decided to get together for a consensual encounter on January 6, 2013, in the evening at Peter's house. With no conditions attached, their goal was to explore one another's common interests and fetishes related to bondage. Jason rode the Central Line from Stratford to Northall on January 6, 2013. Under a jacket, he was wearing what appeared to be MI5 uniforms: blue pants, a black bag, a waist-length jacket, and a black woolen cap. Peter met Jason when he arrived at about 7 o'clock in the evening. The first exchange was awkward but kind, as is often the case when two introverts meet for the first time. The first exchange was awkward but kind, as is often the case when two introverts meet for the first time. Introductions were exchanged with a mix of nervous jokes about meeting in person. Jason gave a good impression of himself, and Peter seemed at ease with him. Soft lighting and mellow music were used to set the mood as the evening went on. Then Jason showed out his handcrafted, wildly inaccurate MI5 uniform. The costume consisted of improvised pieces, such as a black lanyard that was shackled to a fictitious ID that stated John Marshall, British Secret Intelligence. It was a little after 7:30 p.m. The small chat ended. Jason informed Peter that he was under arrest for spying and hacking a government laptop reaching over him. Jason ordered him to strip entirely of his clothes, and Peter obeyed. Jason then told Peter to lie face down on the bed. The thrill of fear was part of Peter's excitement, but the situation quickly worsened. Jason reached inside his luggage for a heavy-duty adhesive tape. He then bound Peter's wrists and ankles tightly. He then placed a strip around Peter's mouth, rendering him helpless and motionless. Peter was at the mercy of his captor as he lay in bed. Jason rummaged through his nicely folded clothes and retrieved his wallet. Jason then began to demand Peter's PIN for his bank card. When Peter hesitated, Jason increased the intimidation. Jason pushed a hunting knife against his cheek. It was now crystal evident that the situation had escalated from a consensual roleplay to true horror. Peter faced growing aggression as he refused to comply with the demand for his PIN. Jason was still submerged in his dream of surveillance and questioning, so Jason gave Peter an injection that he dubbed Truth Serum. The substance was actually haloperidol, which is an antipsychotic with no truth-inducing characteristics. Peter's screams were muffled with tape and drowned out by classical music. All the while, Peter's pet buoy squawked in terror. A genuinely horrible scenario followed, with Peter being cruelly tortured with a cigarette. The torture continued, and Peter's misery and anxiety worsened as the night wore on. By midnight, Peter was worn down and gasping for air due to his heart condition. He had no access to oxygen and was forced to give away the PIN. It was either this or death. Jason then briefly left the house to withdraw £780 from Peter's account at a nearby show garage. He made a few purchases and then returned to Peter's house. When he returned after midnight, the situation worsened. Peter begged for his life as John intended to kill his witness. John started the end by choking Peter. He accomplished this by securely putting cling film around his head. He sealed it over his head, face, and nose. Despite being hogtied and suffocated, Jason attempted to prevent air from entering his body. Peter's fight didn't stop there. Peter battled for his life and struggled against his bindings. Jason attempted to suffocate him using a plastic bag. The struggle resulted in them falling off the bed. With a thud, Peter landed under the sofa, leaving just the sound of plastic rustling and his muffling as he pleads for air. Jason stood calmly and, in an utterly sinister move, delivered a mock benediction in Latin. He said, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." He then stated, "I am the resurrection and life." By this moment, Peter was critically unconscious, and his lungs were filled with CO2. Peter led a solitary life, and his last connection attempt ended brutally with his prominent death. Jason set up the scene to look like a burglary. He looked through drawers, shelves, and cabinets, but did not take anything valuable, including Peter's tech gadgets and gold watch, which might confuse investigations. He dumped numerous unidentified items down the toilet and ripped as many wires as he could from Peter's computer array, turning off the music and the LED lights. The room is now quiet. Jason lit another cigarette and carefully collected his possessions. He then started to spread a flammable liquid around the room, focusing on the bed walls and sofa, and most intensively all over Peter's immobile body, and with a flick of his lighter, fire began to consume the room, quickly filling it with thick black smoke. At precisely 12:41 a.m. Jason exited the bungalow, certain that he had removed all traces of his presence. To conceal his participation, Jason messaged Peter through Badoo at exactly 9:33 a.m. the next morning. He wrote, "Sorry I didn't show up last night, felt sick. Would you like to meet soon?" A few hours later, he added, "Are you there?" and continued to send messages like, "Don't ignore me, I said I was sorry, and stop being mean." Receiving no reply, Jason eventually sent "Fine, be like that," marking the end of their communication. Peter's demise was the result of a deliberate murder for a very little amount, leading to an initial investigation that tragically failed to apprehend his murderer. This oversight allowed Jason, dubbed the Badoo Killer, to prolong his deadly rampage. The meticulous examination of this case is precisely what would ultimately lead to Jason's capture. In a frantic attempt to cover his tracks, Jason overlooked one of Peter's webcams, which recorded the entire act of torture and murder. However, before this crucial evidence emerged, Jason enjoyed temporary freedom. On Tuesday, January 8, 2013, nearly 30 hours post-murder, Jason utilized Peter's bank card to book a flight to Rome. The transaction slipped through undetected since the card wasn't reported stolen, the amount was negligible, and Peter's account wasn't under active surveillance. By Friday, January 11th, at 6:50 a.m., Jason was aboard a flight from Gatwick Airport to Rome, living off the funds pilfered from Peter and indulging in a carefree lifestyle. Although Jason relished this new life financed by his crime, the money dwindled quickly. He then exploited the dating app Badoo, not for social engagement, but as a means to prey on vulnerable, solitary men, using the app's user profiles as a resource for identifying potential victims. The profiles often disclosed personal details such as age, living situation, and sexual preferences. Jason used this information to target older individuals who lived alone and exhibited submissive traits aligning with his malevolent inclinations. On January 26, 20 days following Peter's murder, Jason encountered 67-year-old Vincenzo, a retired tour guide and divorced father, well regarded in his community. Operating under the alias Gabriel, Jason lured his next victim using the same deceitful methods that culminated in Peter's unfortunate demise. On January 26, 20 days following Peter's murder, Jason encountered 67-year-old Vincenzo, a retired tour guide and divorced father, well regarded in his community. Operating under the alias Gabriel, Jason lured his next victim using the same deceitful methods that culminated in Peter's unfortunate demise. Their encounter at 7 p.m. began like a standard first date. After an awkward introduction and courteous small talk, Jason was invited inside. The scenario was eerily similar to previous events. During their interaction, Jason unveiled his MI5 disguise, claiming to be on a mission from the British Embassy. His costume included a homemade ID, plastic handcuffs, and a toy gun on his belt. However, this time, his ensemble contained actual items like a hunting knife of Trenon and real pepper spray. Jason returned to his role as the MI5 agent. Jason called Vincenzo a spy and arrested him. Vincenzo played along by undressing and letting himself to be gagged and hogtied. The mutually agreed upon role-play quickly escalated. Jason demanded Vincenzo's pin. Jason increased his tension by burning Vincenzo with a cigarette, while Vincenzo resisted the attempts to assault him. Despite being beaten and burned, Vincenzo remained brave. However, Jason blinded him with pepper spray, leaving him unable to breathe. Vincenzo finally surrendered, giving up his PIN. Jason quickly withdrew €400 from a nearby cash machine so as to give the impression of a crime. Jason tarnished the house but did not fake a burglary. He stole a debit card, laptop, hard drive, electronic gate key, and Vincenzo's automobile. Jason opted not to use cling film or fire to kill and destroy evidence. Jason chose a more direct approach. He suffocated Vincenzo using an electric flex cord. This was a long and difficult procedure, with the pressure increasing until Vincenzo was unconscious. Not entirely content, Jason then repeatedly struck Vincenzo in the chest with his hunting knife while standing over his motionless body. He recited the last rites in Latin with no imminent danger, forcing his departure. Unlike the other time, Jason had left the scene gently and in silence as he had arrived. Unfortunately, Vincenzo's body took more than a week to be discovered. By then, Jason had already left the scene. Jason's motivation resurfaced again once he spent all the money he acquired. He was ready to pursue, rob, and murder again, this time targeting an Italian man named Umberto Gismondi. Umberto was a single Italian male who enjoyed S&M bondage and roleplay. He also agreed to meet a stranger he had flirted with online. On Thursday, February 21, 2023, at 7:00 p.m., a man introduced himself as Gabriel but was actually Jason Marshall, the Badoo killer. Umberto welcomed him into his home like he had the previous two occasions. The evening was filled with soft lighting and music, but Jason's activities were closely monitored by the police from a surveillance van. They tracked Jason's activities and linked him to the earlier crime using chat logs on Badoo. The police had traced Jason's withdrawals using Vincenzo's stolen bank cards and were aware of the stolen automobile. The cops observed the two males engaging in respectful conversation. Jason and Umberto ate and watched television, but the anticipated violent criminal behavior did not occur. The police operation appeared pointless, and at the end of their shift, the encounter had stayed peaceful. The surveillance team left, expecting the night to be uneventful. But the situation inside the apartment deteriorated. Jason's patience wore thin as he became annoyed with Umberto's unwillingness to participate in the more intense activities. Jason snapped. The following attack was grave. Umberto was beaten, kicked, pepper sprayed, and struck with a Trekkin during the violence. Jason demanded Umberto's PIN number, as he did with his last two victims. Umberto right away refused to give over his PIN number, but as the assault became more severe, he eventually gave in. Despite being severely hurt, Umberto survived these beatings. Jason then stole an iPad and €400 from Umberto's account, but as he was preparing to leave, Umberto's gag came loose. He screamed for help, causing neighbors to call the police. Neighbors responded quickly, and officers rushed back to the scene. Umberto provided the police with his attacker's name, Jason. Utilizing GPS data from Jason's phone, the police swiftly located him on a bus in Rome's southern suburbs and arrested him at 3:30 a.m. He faced charges of attempted murder and murder. On July 9, 2014, Jason stood trial and was convicted, receiving a 16-year prison sentence, with a mandate for at least 3 years of psychiatric care. With the Badoo killer incarcerated, the case was temporarily closed. However, in Italy, after Jason's arrest and conviction, the focus shifted back to the UK due to new evidence in Peter's murder, a webcam recording of the crime discovered by Peter's nephew, Christopher. This footage, which captured the entire murder, was instrumental in redefining the investigation. Previously deemed an accidental fire, Peter's death was now confirmed as murder. The UK authorities began extradition proceedings to bring Jason back from Italy to face charges related to Peter's murder. Extradition, a legal and diplomatic process, ensures that individuals are returned to the jurisdiction of the alleged crime. The clear evidence facilitated Jason's extradition, and upon his return, he was charged with Peter's murder. During his UK trial, the gruesome details of Peter's final moments were revealed through the webcam footage. The prosecution presented a strong case, including evidence of Jason's use of Peter's bank cards and his flight to Italy. Despite his defense claiming amnesia and referencing mental health issues, the conclusive evidence, particularly the webcam footage, led to his conviction. Jason Marshall was sentenced to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 39 years, a sentence reflecting the heinous nature of his crime. The judge condemned the sadistic act, doubting any remorse from Jason. A parole board will eventually assess his suitability for release, though it's possible he may never be freed. This case serves as a stark warning about the risks of seeking companionship online. In the end, we're left wondering what led this man to commit such a terrible act. It's a reminder that sometimes the reasons behind such crimes are complex and deep-rooted. Let's use this story as a call to pay attention and care for each other to prevent something like this from happening again. Thanks for watching till the end. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy listening to Morbid Chronicles. That's it for today. See you in the next video.